It's in being that 12-year-old. And that's the magic for me. That's the magic of ghost stories and the magic that no technology will ever be able to erase. Why do we like ghost stories? Maybe because it's in ghost stories and sitting around little campfires like this that we are at our most human. I thank you for listening to my stories. We have about 20 minutes left here. I'd like to open this up to your questions, your stories, your comments, anything at all. If you want another story, we could probably do that too. But you've been very, very patient tonight. Any questions you have? Yes.
Oh, do you go to all the places you research?
About 90% of them.
Really?
And I got to tell you, that's cool. Okay, you know,
Oh, yeah.
that's my 12-year-old. I have been to some really spooky places. For the record, I've been to more haunted places than anybody you know. Never heard anything, never felt anything. But there have been some really cool, spooky places to go to, and probably one or two places I wouldn't care to go back to.
Where?
Where? Central State Hospital. It's partially bulldozed now. It was an abandoned 19th century insane asylum, and it was not a mental health institute. It was an insane asylum. And complete with chains on the walls and the whole thing. Now, you got to understand, before I went there, before I did my tour, I had lunch with a couple of Indiana State, they call them Capitol Police. It's the branch of the state police that guards state facilities. And I sat next to a young man who was about 10 years younger than me. This guy, he had muscles in places I didn't even have the places. A state trooper, and he looked me in the eye and he said, "I can assure you I will be written up for disobeying a direct order before I ever go into that place alone again." All kinds of stories. So I went there that day and tried to introduce myself to the director, who for some reason thought I was from the state. And when he found out what I really wanted, he asked me to leave. So I did. But I took kind of a circuitous route around, and when I stopped to talk to a groundskeeper, he showed me around. But when I started talking to that groundskeeper, I started, not really know, you don't really know how people are going to react. And I sort of said, I'm doing a project, want to do the history of Central State. And he was an old man, he looked at me, stopped me, and he said, "I know what you're after. And I can promise you I hear them." I said, "Who do you hear?" He said, "The patients. They scream at night." And he said, "Tonight, I'm going to be here all by myself, and if you come back, I'll give you a tour by flashlight." And I said, "Tonight, I'm going to be home with my wife and daughter. Forget it." But anyway, that was a weird place. The other really strange place is one, and this happens, of a location I've agreed not to reveal the exact place, but it was a house, small house in Porter, outside of Chesterton. I won't bore you with the details, but it was the strangest way to get a story I had ever had. I ended up quite inadvertently running into people who had lived there 20 years apart, who didn't know each other, and who had told me almost page and verse of what they had without ever having met each other, including some really bizarre stuff. And you know what? I'm not immune to this. I get the woogies, but the only thing I can tell you, just from my very subjective personal experience, is I felt like there was something wrong with that house. Nothing more than that. Never heard anything, never felt anything. I can promise you, though, and maybe it was the psyche of knowing the stories, but it felt wrong, and when I left that house, I really thought I didn't want to go back. Those are probably two of the only places I would not willingly go back to. But I've been to some really cool places. I've been to places I thought, even if this wasn't haunted, it ought to be, Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do you determine what stories get in, how you investigate?
Great question. How do you know? Because they're all over. What I look for, you see, I'm not an author, I'm not a writer, I'm not even a storyteller, I'm a story reteller. Okay? So what I am looking for is not necessarily what, for instance, ghost hunters look for. For me, a story has to have a narrative quality. All the stories I've told you tonight, for the most part, have a beginning and a middle, a central crisis, and an end. There are a lot of places. Everybody says, have you heard Wolf Mansion in Hobart is haunted? Okay, yeah, cool. All right, there you go. I'm psychic, man. We're connected, dude. No, but the thing of it is, I say, great, tell me the story. Well, it's haunted. Okay, tell me the story. Well, there's ghosts there. Well, that's cool. There may well be, but there's not necessarily a narrative, and that's what I really look for, is a narrative. I try not to ever have a story that's just a series of phenomena, a series of events. You know, you moved into this house, things moved, there were footsteps, and you ran. Good enough, but not the narrative quality for a story. The other things that I look for, it's real simple. If I cannot fall in love with a story like I was 12 years old again, then I won't write it. Before I can write that story to try to get you guys to love that story, I have to be stone cold in love with that story. And I'll tell you the truth. I have a full-time career, about 50 hours a week, so I do a lot of my writing late at night. And if I'm at the computer about 1 o'clock in the morning and I look and all the hair on the back of my hand is standing straight up, I'm in the zone, baby. You know? I know that's going to be a great one. Yes, I am a coward and I woogie myself out on a regular basis, okay? Other questions, guys? Yes, sir.
Did you do anything on Axman's Bridge?
Axman's Bridge. I know there are stories about Axman's Bridge, but I really haven't done that one.
Oh yeah, and about is that one thing that you talked about the jail? Oh, is that the spirits of the old county jail?
Yeah, the spirits of the old jail is the Valparaiso jail. And it's really interesting because that's one of those that if you go there and you ask, they would love to talk about their ghost stories. There's very little rhyme or reason for me in who likes to talk about their ghost stories and who doesn't, okay? For instance, when I was doing the book on college ghost stories, I'm sorry, I'm going to get in trouble here. I contacted Purdue Lafayette because there was a ghost story of Amelia Earhart then that I eventually got. When I contacted them at the time, what I was told by the PR person was, excuse me, Purdue University is a no-ghost zone. Sorry, guys. Meanwhile, West Point said, cool, and sent me something this, you know. There are a lot of schools, for instance, I've done schools where they will just say, you know what, we want nothing to do with this. You got Kaler School in Dyer, which is an amazing place. And there's a difference. There's a difference between when people tell you an old story or when you go in a place like that and you quickly realize they mean it. If you talk to people at Kaler School, you talk to the right people, and a number of them, they absolutely do positively believe that that place is haunted. That's what I say. When I say I wonder, that's what I mean. You know, I love it when I sit down and I talk to somebody who seems totally sensible. By the way, I have met some nuts along the way. Okay. I'm sorry. Can I sidetrack here real quick? I'm sorry. You got me talking. My very first book signing. I didn't want to do a book signing. I didn't want to write a book. Anyway, the small bookstore in Chesterton asked me to come in. The first two people, I'm very, very nervous. The first lady walks up and says, hi, did you write these books? I said, yes, I did. I said, did you get one? She said, no, I'd never get it because you're glorifying demons and I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ. Did I mention I'm a pastor? I am. The second guy there, and I am not kidding you, needed my help. He wanted my help in robbing a grave. And he was serious. He wanted me to help exhume a grave. And I thought, I need a life. I need something better to do. But then I've run across a lot of neat folks like you who just enjoy it. But then there comes that person who sits down with me who has absolutely no reason to lie. As a matter of fact, some folks, almost they could lose a lot if their name came out. And they tell me flat out,